Hey everybody, Tony here. The past week we've seen a lot of changes from privateer press. With the changing of the forum to the disbanding of the press gangers, we thought today would be a really good time to kind of talk about what happened. We're really lucky that Jackson Wood from Privateer Press has joined us today. One thing I want to ask is, before you post anything, please listen to the entire cast and hear what both we talk about and what Privateer Press has to say. We try to do our best to talk about the changes and get some good discussion going around about what Privateer Press's thoughts were, and we really hope you guys enjoy it. After you listen, we look forward to hearing all of your feedback for this episode. So with that being said, here's the show.
Welcome to Turn Extension, a supplemental podcast for the Advanced Maneuvers YouTube channel.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Turn Extension. My name is Tony, or Polar Bear Cub on the forums.
Hey everybody, it's Stout Art, Kevin on the forums.
Hey everybody, it's Devin, Cutthroat Cure on the forums.
So there's been a lot of changes the last week, just within Privateer Press in general. One of the biggest things that first started off on Monday, we saw that there was a big change in the forums. The forums were streamlined. We lost the general discussion, we lost the faction forums. And then also, as of Tuesday or Wednesday? Was it Tuesday?
It was Wednesday.
It was Wednesday. So as of Wednesday, yeah, because today's Friday. Wow. As of Wednesday, Privateer Press came out and officially announced that they are going to stop with the PG program. So I guess that's a lot of big changes that have happened.
Yeah,
So-
and there's been sufficient, I'll say discussion, although others might use more colorful terms. There's been sufficient discussion as to all the things that have been going on. A lot of speculation, a lot of people who are like, oh, well, this is definitively what's going on because, I know what's happening at Privateer Press. And I think that a lot of it just needs to be put on the table and kind of hashed out so that we can get an understanding of what's going on and why was it happening.
Yep. Yeah, and actually, it kind of leads into what our discussion is going to be today. We're going to be talking about all of these things that have been happening. And we are actually really, really fortunate enough to where we actually have Jackson Wood from Privateer Press that's on the podcast with us today.
Hello.
How you doing, man?
I'm doing exceptional today, and I'm glad to be here.
Awesome. We're really, really happy that you're able to join us today. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day, getting to the office really early to be able to record with us.
It's no earlier than I usually come in.
That's crazy. All right, so I guess before we get started into the questions, because we've got a good amount, really quick, Jackson, what do you do? What is your role at Privateer Press? How long have you been there? All that fun stuff.
Yeah, so I'm the marketing manager at Privateer Press. I work almost exclusively under Matt Wilson and Will Schick. I coordinate the marketing department. I do a lot of varied activities. My job is exceptionally multifaceted. I have a hand in most every department in some capacity, maybe not directly, but I am relaying things all of the time. And I came in September, so I've been here only 6 months and just working my butt off as we all do.
Yeah, and I feel like a lot of the recent changes you were the one that put out the press release for the last couple of big changes that we've had. So again, I'm really excited that you're on here. We've got a lot of good questions that we've seen throughout the community have been asking, so we're going to do our best to try to ask those questions and, kind of see what, kind of what's going on a little bit behind the scenes.
Absolutely.
All right, so I guess, Kevin, do you want to start us off with the first question?
As I mentioned, there's been a lot of discussions that have been going on the forums about what's going and by forums I mean forums, Facebooks, Twitters, all the things, the different medium forums that we use to discuss about this game. One of the things was how did the decision for this proposed disband of the PGs come to fruition? What are some of the options that you kind of looked at before you went to, all right, well, disbanding is the only real logical business sense choice before us?
That's a complicated question, and I'll try to answer it the best I can. A lot of what led there was just over the years how big the press gang has gotten. In checking the current active members, we had over 1,000 active PGs between North America and Europe and everywhere outside of that. I say that because we have a partner in the UK who handles the European press gangers. or the EU press gangers. And with that whole issue, it gets complicated to say EU versus UK.
Yep.
There's a good 300 to 400 in Europe, and over late 600, early 700s for the rest of the world. So it got huge, which is exciting without question. It's a massive initiative and did amazing things. But it just got to the point that we didn't have the resources to necessarily be able to sustain it the way we wanted to. Hungerford did an exceptional job when he was the quartermaster. James was doing the absolute best he can and was phenomenal as well. And we got to where we are now, where James moved from being the quartermaster to helping someone else internally with convention support. That would be JR. And in that time frame, myself, Schick, and Hungerford took up being able to support the press gang as we moved towards where we are now.
So I guess before you guys decided to officially disband it, there was talk where you guys have been talking about this for a while. Was there any other options that were looked at beforehand?
Given all of the outside factors that we can't necessarily speak about right now, this was the most prudent and reasonable option we could take going forward.
And I guess that kind of... I'm sorry, Devin, but I guess that kind of plays into... And this is something that I spoke to Tony before the cast, which was this was a business decision. And a lot of times it's very hard for the community to look at business decisions and for better lack of terms, be behind them, because for a lot in the community, they're very passionate about the game that we're playing. And I mean, to the point of outrage when something doesn't go the way that they think it is. And I'm not necessarily talking about this is busted or this rule is busted. I'm talking about the community parts of this game where, things that happen on the forum, people get outraged. Things happen with the PG shit, people get outraged. And I think a lot of people are struggling right now with separating this is a business decision Privateer Press had to make versus this is a personal. It wasn't like you guys at Privateer Press went down and went, what can we do today to piss off the community?
Yeah, it's fuck it, roll a dice, 3 up, they're gone.
And that is a thing that I actively try to avoid because we do care about the community passionately as well. A lot of what we do insider-wise and when we go on podcasts such as this is we want to show off the fact that our community is phenomenal. And I say amazing and phenomenal because I don't have better words to describe it. And there's no one that I have talked to in the office that is happy about this decision. It's, as you said, it is a business decision, and it was the one that we had to get with.
Well, Tony, to remark on an earlier statement you said about rolling a 3-up, let's remember that Tough changed, and after the forum changes, we were already knocked down, so there was no tough roll at all for this. So it was just straight
boo, boo, no.
But my current question is you guys are mentioning business things and outside issues, and I think the question that lies on a lot of people, and I know that it might be a little bit of a heated discussion, is would you say that this decision to basically remove the volunteers of the PG program had anything to do with the Wizards of the Coast lawsuit?
Or really any of those legal matters, because I heard that there was something going on with Ultima Online and stuff like that. But a lot of speculation is people are like, well, Wizards of the Coast cards, they have kind of the same thing going on. Is that the case, or is it?
Yeah, there's a lot of litigations going on out in the world. I can't comment on it for us directly, but I can say that it will be very interesting to see how the gaming world and conventions and businesses proceed forward depending on what decisions are made around those litigations.
Yeah, one of the crazy things about American law is once a case, for anybody out there and our listeners, once a case is won, not saying that this is what is being attributed to it, but if a case is won on a certain matter, then it creates in law terms a precedent that other cases can be brought forth and actually kind of swung through because of the fact that said precedence is achieved. So say if Wizards of the Coast would lose said case over the term volunteers and charges, it could possibly create a spiral effect where other volunteer programs could have that. So just a little bit of information to put out there for our listeners.
It's bullshit because one person fucking ruins everything for everybody.
Well, but you're going under the assumption that this decision was made about that. It's yes, litigations like this can have ripple effects where even though it hasn't necessarily impacted a company, it could impact a company, and a company may take actions to prevent that from happening. But it's also a scenario where some companies may be like, yeah, okay, that litigation happened, but we have some sort of airtight, policy that people have to sign off on that prevents us from it, so we don't have to worry about it. It's theory, and a lot of people in the community are like, I know definitively that this is a result of, and that's just not true. That's you cannot pin this on one specific action, and even if you could, what real merit does it benefit us to be like, oh, this is the cause? Are we looking for a scapegoat? Do we really need one? Like, let's just kind of look at the situation and move.
And I mean, no matter what, we have to look at the fact that, I was a PG, Tony was a PG, and you have to look at the fact that 15 years Privateer Press has run one of the greatest programs known to wargaming, and a lot of other companies have emulated that fact, and the end result is that Privateer Press is a for-profit company, and sometimes hard business decisions need to be made, and I completely understand that. But one of the things I did want to talk about on a business standpoint is Matt Wilson had mentioned that, especially in reference to conventions, which myself and another fellow ex-ganger, as we're now coining them, is we work with conventions quite closely, especially on the East Coast, the Nova Open. And Matt Wilson had mentioned about going through temp agencies in order to help, find more help for the convention scene. My question is, from an accounting standpoint, and if you don't really have much on this, that's fine, but I'm curious why Privateer Press would possibly go through a temp agency instead of just doing like a 1099 contractor's fee, like Privateer Press already employs your freelance artists and sculptors.
Yeah, I know a little bit about that. I don't know everything. Part of it has to do with Washington labor laws, as far as I understand it. There are points in time, and again, I could be wrong about this, so I'm just going to preface it that, where contracting can work for certain professions and particular needs that are met, while other times it may run into the round where they say, no, you have to employ this person. This person has to be an employee of some kind. And so the temp agency route that was being investigated and is currently the thought, which may not be the end result, but is where it is currently, would be to make sure that everything was above board and as proper as possible for those particular circumstances.
My question is so that's dealing with a lot of the bigger conventions. What about the small independent conventions that Privateer Press necessarily doesn't have as, they don't go to an official capacity? What do you see, the tournaments that are being run there? A good one for us, it's local, is Nova Open. It's pretty much been entirely run by volunteers. Devin and Tanias have really been running that the last couple years. What do you think the impact to that is now, knowing that it's going to be harder for them to get the volunteers? What incentive do they really have to try to pull those volunteers, and even for them themselves to run the convention anymore? That's
one of the harder ones that I see as well. I don't know how those conventions will incentivize their volunteers any more than any other convention does. I know a number of conventions get themselves set up as nonprofits, and they can have volunteers that way somehow. I think a lot of it will come down to the passion of the people involved. And similar to how we've done things now, when there are conventions like that going on, we still ask people to reach out to us to, ask for our support, because we don't want to stop doing that if we can. So we're still going to offer as we have, as best we can.
Yeah, I know I had been talking to James. I had actually, when I had heard the news on Wednesday, of course my mind goes into a spin, since, as I said, we spend so many hours on the Nova Open, and that's in September, and which will be after the April deadline. So, of course my head's spinning, thinking, hey, last year I worked 60-plus hours on this convention and had a hard time getting help, and now without the incentives, is that going to be a lot harder? And I know, talking to James, and JR, we had discussed the, after Adepticon about sitting down and working out some of the options. So I do know that James and them, since they work with the conventions, have started talking to some of the people who run those smaller conventions. I'd say smaller, but it's ones that Privateer Press has not officially stepped into the ring for, about providing additional support, in addition to prize support to help with a little bit of incentive. Of course, that's nothing that's been guaranteed, but I do know that Wednesday when the news was announced that you guys were talking about that. So talking about support.
Hey, Devin, before we go into the next one, I actually want to take a little bit more of a deep dive in that, because I've been giving it a lot of thought, and I will admit that when this news first came out, I'm not even a PG. When this news first came out, I was pretty livid for the first hour or two. Like, I was like, what the F is going on? This is, you're stripping out the support. Games aren't going to happen. Tournaments aren't going to happen. The people who've been putting in long hours aren't going to. I was just pissed. Like, I'm not even a PG, and I was pissed. I couldn't even imagine somebody who was actually doing the PG ship. But after a while, I kind of started calming down and thinking about it from the business, the logical side of it versus the emotional side of it. And one of the things that I was thinking about is when it comes to these, and this is actually something for all players of the game to really think about, is when I go to a tournament or to a convention, be it local, that's a 3-day, like LVO or Nova Open or something like that, or maybe it's just a weekender style tournament where, you run a couple rounds Saturday and a couple rounds Sunday. A lot of times I'll go to these things and there's other things that are happening. So you'll have like Masters and then Champions, and then there's, Who's the Boss, and, my brain just shut down on the one where the spellcasters get to choose their spells.
Spell draft.
Spell draft. So there's all these other things, and there are times in a convention where I'm not doing anything. Like, I'm literally just sitting at a chair watching people play because I don't have anything I'm in. I'm not in heats or I'm not running anything. That's a perfect opportunity to go up to the convention organizers, now that there's not this stigmata of only PGs run tournaments or only PGs run conventions, of going to the person who's running the event and going, hey, I don't normally do this, but is there anything I can do to help? Like, you want me to set up the next few tables, or do you want me, like, I don't have to be a PG or a judge to contribute even 10, 15 minutes to take the light off. And I really encourage the rest of the community to take that opportunity. When you're at a con just sitting there watching it because you're bored and you don't have anything else to do, go up to the people who are running the event and be like, how can I help? Like, do you want me to go get you a soda, set up tables? What can I do to help to take the pressure off of you?
It's an opportunity for anyone. I did a number of years of convention support just for my own enjoyment as well. Well before this, and it's really just how your mileage may vary from person to person. You just got to do the things that you feel you enjoy and you want to do, and if you want to help out, just offer to give a hand.
Yeah, and that's something, we've been really blessed in the past, especially at Nova and a lot of events around this on the East Coast. I can say that whether you were a PG or not, we've always been given a lot of help, and there was a little bit of a stigma that, only the PGs were the people that could actually be doing the work. And so I do think that on a positive light of this change, it has opened that up a little bit, and where now that I've seen a lot of the groups get past kind of the shock and awe of, oh my God, something that we now held as one of the highest honors for us as PGs. I know for me, that was a really high respect, and I was really upset. Tony knows this. Now that I've come off this feeling of it, now it's kind of opening up a lot of dialogue and conversations with people about different ways that we can still approach it. So I think that's definitely been interesting. But one of the questions I do want to ask is, one of the things, especially with stores, has been this suggestion of store support and offering through the retail. Is there any speculation about what might be included in that you could give us, or how that might work?
Absolutely, I can talk about that a bit more. As I said, we haven't gone into this lightly. There are a few things that are still being worked out, just because we only have so much time to do everything. But we're planning to offer retail support kits, and we will be offering these to clubs in the same capacity that they've been offered before. So we're making sure that clubs aren't shirked away from this. And part of the plan right now is to actually look into more club support, because we know that there are times where a club is the only option, especially for places outside of the United States in the global scheme. The United States having so many game stores is kind of an oddity compared to the rest of the world. But that said, the idea is that whoever is running the event will get something cool in addition to there being stuff in the kit for support. So, for example, it could be some really awesome tokens you wouldn't be able to get otherwise. That maybe there's a specially branded fire token.
Okay. Would they be doing anything like exclusive models in the future, or is that a little bit too much?
That's much right now. It's something that I can say has been kicked around, but as to what that may look like, it would depend. Okay. And that may be something that happens with organized play league kits in the future. We don't know exactly.
Do you think that there's a potential of I apologize, I've got a bit of a cynic in me, and by a bit I mean a lot. Do you think that there's a potential that if you make the kits for the stores or the clubs too enticing in what goes into those kits, that you might have less than enthusiastic people about the game running events strictly for what's in the box?
Oh, probably. That's always a risk one may warrant, and finding that balance is always going to be the most difficult part. Before I came to Privateer Press, I was a store owner myself. You will always find that type of attitude in any place you go, be it in the gaming world or outside of the gaming world. And the best you could do is, as a community, find the people that you really want to prop up as community leaders and make sure that they are both well supported by the community and know that their voice is heard.
So is, in a lot of ways, is Privateer Press potentially looking at the communities to basically police themselves? Because in a lot of ways, the PG program was this situation where you had a focal point individual that you could go to, and they'd run demo games or they'd run tournaments or whatever at your stores or your clubs or whatever it is. And if you had a problem with them, there was an avenue for you to reach out to Privateer Press and go, hey, this guy's a jerk, or this guy's not running things, or he's manipulating the system. And then you guys kind of weaned or policed yourself within the press gangers to weed out the I'll call them bad eggs, for lack of a term. Is it now a situation of, since the press gangship is over, that it's more of the store owners are tasked, or maybe the community's tasked with, or you guys just need to take it upon yourself to weed out these bad people, these bad organizers, and get people that you trust in those positions?
I think it's going to be a joint effort, for lack of a better thought there. I believe that you guys, you being the community, will prop up those people you care for. So people who were press gangers will hopefully keep doing what they're doing because they love the game, and the community around them will continue to assemble. And those people will be propped up, and if they were good, as I hope everyone is, then there will be no issues. And of course, you'll run into the same issue with store owners where they're not doing things. That's on them. That's their business. They could do what they want with it. And at that point in time, it would be a time to look into potentially propping up a club and saying, well, this person doesn't support us. They don't have product. They aren't helping us as a community. We're going to take it upon ourselves to do it. And if they're a smart retailer, they'll see that need and do something about it.
So and you kind of mentioned that you were looking into supporting clubs like that. Is there a way? So I'm a personal individual. I go to a store. You know, the store owner isn't necessarily running events regularly or really inspired to. For the most part, they're just kind of one of those store owners who's like, look, there's product on my shelf. Buy from me. Is there an avenue for a Joe Blow like me to reach out to Privateer Press and go, I need help. Like, I don't know what to do, but I know something needs to be done. Can you help us, or can you kind of give us guiding, instructions on how to start this interaction to form clubs or something like that?
Yeah, absolutely. Right now I often curate the website as well. There are web pages being built into their final forms coming soon for organized play, where it'll be a sort of how-to guide into running tournaments and pulling things together and that sort of deal. In addition to just reaching out to us and asking for support in general, like that relates to clubs too. We're like, hey, I don't know what to do here. What can I do? And we'll always do the best we can to offer some advice.
So I know that
Now,
at one point, in time we had a judge packet. Are you basically saying that there will be a organizer packet, for better lack of terms?
More or less, yes.
One of the worries, and I'm definitely seeing this a lot in closed communities and discussions, is that Tony at one point used to be the PG for a store, and when he moved and they lost that PG, they have basically ceased to do a lot of stuff, and nobody has been willing to step up to either become a PG or handle a lot of these events. Do you see that becoming an issue? I know you were talking about retailing stores, needing to handle that. Is that the kind of consideration where a store may not be focusing on that specifically in general, and they would need to create like an individual club, or is that something like, would Privateer Press have somebody maybe reach out, or because it sometimes seems like it seems to be like a something that's on the back burner. And I noticed that without a PG who was basically a dedicated person by Privateer Press, their community has suffered.
Yeah, that's interesting. I unfortunately expect that will happen in pockets around because, again, oftentimes what a community needs is a community leader, which is unfortunate. That is the necessary catalyst, but it happens. And if someone's not willing to step up, it's hard to spur human nature to want to do that thing unless people are passionate about it.
Yeah.
Now, what would you recommend for pockets like this? Like, let's say some of our listeners might exist in a community like that. They want to be, they want to play, they want to develop this stuff, but maybe they are falling into that situation. What would you suggest to them to kind of mitigate that?
The first thing I say would just be reach out to us. Let us know what's going on. Tell us, hey, I'm having a difficulty and I don't know how to approach it. What can I do? And then from there, we can look to find an answer together.
Yeah, and I'll jump on that and say, like, that was the first place where that's really where I became a PG, because it's like what you said, Jackson, is you need to have a community leader. For me, I love the game. I was absolutely infatuated with the game, and I was like, you know what? I want to do this because I want to build the community. And for me, my suggestion is that I spent a year and a half every single Wednesday demoing at the game. And it wasn't until 8 months in I realized that I need to find the biggest fish that was the biggest voice of the community, because I was so new to the community. I had to find out who that voice was and get them to play the game. Once they played the game, everything else started falling into place, and then everyone started playing. The downside was when I left, I tried to get some other people involved to be future press gangers or organizers, and that really just fell apart. I don't necessarily know if having a PG would have helped, more so the fact that they need to have somebody who is willing to put the dice aside to run the tournaments. Because that group, they pretty much stopped playing, even with the PG program honestly active for last 4 or 5 years. They run a tournament every once in a while, but it's very rare. And I don't think that's because I don't think they're never going to run a PG program. And never run a tournament again because there's no more PGs. I think it's hard for them to run a tournament because there's nobody that stepped up initially to go do it afterwards. They kind of take the reins.
Well, and maybe it's a situation where if you have individuals, so say you have a group of like 4 friends or 5 friends who are play at a store, a relatively small meta, that turns around and goes, well, nobody really wants to put down the dice to run the tournaments, but maybe they develop something where it's like a round robin, like, oh, okay, Chuck, you ran it last week, so I'll run it, or you ran it last month, I'll run it this month. Tony, you run it in March, and Devin can run it in April, and that way the tournaments are still happening, the games are still being played, and it's only you having to sacrifice 1 out of every 4 to run. And you got to remember that the individual who's running the event isn't just necessarily sitting there just going, all right, well, give me your scores when you're done. They're also the person who, when somebody comes up and looks at what's happening at the table, should be going up to them and saying, hey, do you have any questions or anything like that, to build those metas, to increase your size from 4 people to 16 people.
Yeah, no, and don't get me wrong. Let me just clarify a couple things. There have been some people that had stepped up for it. I think one of their issues was it was hard for them to get the support because they weren't a PG at the time. So the opposite might be happening, where now that there is no such thing as a PG, they could actually potentially be getting more support. Scott is the one he's tried to do a lot of stuff to build the community there back up to what it was. And honestly, maybe without the PGs, because he was never able to become a PG, maybe this actually might help. So where he can start running more tournaments, because people aren't necessarily looking for, oh, is it a PG running it? It's more so, hey, if I run this, I'm going to get a little something extra. I really want to help the community. So this might be an easier thing for them.
And I'm assuming, and Jackson, please weigh in on this, I'm assuming that one of the things that you would kind of expect is that individual who's been running things but isn't a PG should really be starting a relationship with their store owner, and at least trying to get the store owner involved and support through the store owner, than to just completely circumvent the store owner and go to Privateer Press and go, hey, I want to start a club.
Correct. I would hope that people go to the closest place that they like playing, be it a store, and reach out to them and say, hey, we have a community here. We want to foster that community with your Game Store community. We want a place that we can come and help our needs, but also help your needs.
I know my store was super, super energetic, because once they had heard the news, my actual store actually reached out to me, since I do so many events through them, and they actually asked me to be the contact for Privateer Press and, through their store for going forward on events. And I was really blessed by that, because, even though I may not be officially a Privateer Press ganger anymore, the store still respected my spot. So, a lot of press gangers out there, or even people who are still interested, reach out to your store and talk to them, because, one of the things that were in the mention of the press release was the fact that, the store can assign a contact. So it doesn't mean that you can't still help run events. You're not being kicked out. As I said, my store chose me, and I'm still the point of contact for that. So, there's still options for that, and if you can go through your store, it's definitely the best manner.
So I want to move on to talk about the forum changes, but before I do you guys have any other questions dealing with the specifics of the PG program?
I have one more, and this is not a big one, but I think it's an interesting one. So as a PG, one of our major tasks was to run demo games. Is demo games now something that you see falling onto the store's handling? Because I know it's not everybody's favorite thing to do sometimes, and is it going to be something that the stores kind of need to relay, or are we looking for more or less of that organic, hey, you want to learn, let's just grab a few pieces and play? Because I know not every player has 2 battle boxes that they might already have done.
That one's also complicated. I don't know exactly how that's going to fall out. I'm hopeful that stores take it upon themselves to run demos, but it does take up space, and so that's always a consideration for stores. The most positive outcome would be that stores reach out to the former press gangers or people in their community that they trust and say, hey, I'd really appreciate it if you could come and do this, or can we work something out? And there'll be some sort of relationship that blossoms further than what there was between those individuals. So yeah, not everybody has 2 battle group boxes, let alone 2 battle group boxes that may be painted to be able to do a demo.
And I know that for the Nova Nomads, which is one of the clubs that's in our Northern Virginia area, they have some press gangers that run demos. They are quick to identify a new person that walks in, and immediately Sean brings them over hey, you want to run a demo, because they've got painted sets and stuff like that. But I know one of the things that they've been doing almost regularly is, and I don't know what the date is, but there is a National Board Games Day. And then they would, like, that day is one of those days where they go in and they just kind of sit there and like wait for people to come up. So it's you've got people coming in enjoying board games, get them exposed to a tabletop game, which isn't too far of a jump from board games, but enough that you can't necessarily just leave a box and go, good luck. You need somebody to kind of guide you through it. So I would encourage other communities to leverage things like those, or if your store has days where they have like demo days, because I know at one point in time the stores down south used to have demo day, and it was like everybody brought their games to do demos, and it was this giant potluck of demos.
Something I just picture immediately is just some guy standing in a dark alleyway saying, "Hey man, you want to play some Horde?
Hey, you want to get a hit of this new Grimkin?"
Well, so that doesn't happen. We don't have a galley van games going on.
No, it's fine. He comes with free candy.
Oh,
I'll be fine. I'll go to it. I love candy.
Yeah, we worry about you all the time.
I worry about myself. That's why I had to have a wife. She has to take care of me.
I mean, they do have children. They
Oh,
do
God, I
have
know.
children, streamers.
Oh, I feel bad. All right. Any other questions about the PG stuff? Are we good to move on to the forums?
No, I think the biggest thing about the PG thing, it's not necessarily a question, but a takeaway, is that people who are upset about this need to just take a half a second, take the emotion out of it, which I know is really hard. Like,
really
a lot
hard.
of people are really committed and really devoted. And to every single PG out there, thank you very much for the work that you did as a PG, and I hope that you continue doing it. For the rest of us who are just raging about change, calm your tits. Like, settle down and just take a second to realize that some of this is a business decision and nothing more.
Something I will say, and Jackson, if you can relay this back, this will be great. But one of the, and I was very beneficial because I have access to the PG forums still. One of the biggest things, and I think that calmed a lot of my own personal anxiety about the removal, was that Matt Wilson went out and personally put in his own notes and went to a great extent to explain a lot of things on the PG forums. I think that something like that might be available to everybody, I think would be super beneficial, just because, as I said, for a lot of PGs, and I talked to a lot of us, reading those notes and reading his personal opinion, not just the letter he sent out, the official letter, but I mean his actual hey guys, this is how I'm feeling, this is what I'm talking about. I think something like that would have been available to everybody would have been super beneficial, because it really did take a lot of that officialness away and kind of added, we're really sad about this, but let me kind of explain. So that's just, I wanted to applaud Matt on that, because it made me as a PG feel a lot better. And I think that if some of the regular people who, partake in Warmachine and Hordes had been able to read that or had access to that, maybe they wouldn't be as stressed.
For sure. That gets into its own interesting scenario as I paint it here. But it's just that I want to make sure that I am as clear as possible when I say more impactful things. With the press release that went out with it, which I realize not everybody knows that we have press releases. It comes up in the newsfeed on the main part of the website. All of my contact information is there. And so the difficulty is not everybody views the forums. Not everybody viewed the forums before the change happened. I came out of the Colorado meta recently, and there's a number of people who read the forums, but primarily no one cared out of the hundreds upon hundreds of people out there. Not to say that the forums didn't matter, because we'll get into that, but they just followed news or heard things from other people. The press release has my email in it, it has my desk phone, it has ways to get in contact with me for those people who are worried.
I'm going to call that every day now. Just see what you're having for lunch.
Mostly you don't want to know. But I put that out there because there's a huge community that exists outside of those who go on the internet all the time to find this information, and they may only have one or two contacts to get there. And so having one centralized place where we're answering those questions is beneficial, but it doesn't necessarily reach everybody. And while it is a monumental task to handle things on a one-on-one basis with people, it is invited.
That's good to know. So, yeah, guess it's a big thing that they're giving you the direct line, so that's nice.
And that's always been there. I know Sherry's number has been on there on things before, but for these most recent ones, it has been my actual email, my actual phone number. There's no extension to it. It's the direct line in. So I will listen, and I will do my best, and hopefully people don't scream at me.
So you mentioned the forums. I think it's a good time to segue into it. So yeah. Monday, we saw an entirely new forums. We saw the Community Integrated Development forums, which is cool, but we saw a completely different forums than we saw when it went down on the 28th. Two of the biggest things I removed was the general discussion and the faction forums. What was the thought process in removing those?
So similar to the Prescott, you yourself are a mod, and you can attest to how particularly difficult it may be to manage everything.
Yep. Yeah.
So part of the decision was simply we want to make sure that we can adequately handle what is before us. And we didn't want to completely negate it. So instead of going a route where we got rid of everything entirely, we wanted to make sure something was there that people could participate with. And so in removing the general discussion and the faction forums, we felt that we were removing a place that some people thought was very beneficial, but overall, through research and just years of watching, turned out to be something that was more detrimental than a boon. And so we made the conscious decision to try and say, hey, this is a place for new players to come and ask questions. It's a good landing point for them before they are ushered off into the greater community. This is going to be one of their first stops somewhere. We want to make sure that it is reasonable. And this is what I was talking about before we, this is going to be a long rant, so I apologize. Before we started recording, where there is a difference between like criticism and negativity, where saying this is a garbage game and Privateer Press doesn't know what they're doing versus this model seems like it's too good or too bad. What was the thought process here? Why did you come to this decision? As a sort of barometer there. And so having a way for people to be like, it's new, you can still come in here and talk about lists and get feedback and try to build upon what you're building on, but we don't want to invite people screaming for the sake of screaming. And that's gonna sound harsher than it seems, but that's the hyperbole of the general. But
is it though? Is it though? I mean, a lot of people take for granted a free forum. Like, nobody is paying a subscription fee for the forum. Nobody's put any vested value into the forum beyond the company who owns it. So is it a stretch to turn around and be like, I hate to say this, guys, but oh God, I'm going to go punny here. You reap what you sow. Like, the timing of Grimkins is almost prophetic. You reap what you sow. If you're going to go on the forums and just trash talk the shit out of the company in the game, why are you surprised when it got taken down?
Well, I think now a lot of people are seeing is that, Privateer Press doesn't want to hear criticism at all. Because there's a general discussion for, so the Iron Kingdoms, level 7, stuff like that, but we don't see a general discussion for Privateer Press, Warmachine and Hordes flagship game. And I think that's where it's a tough pill to swallow.
Yeah, and part of that, to talk on that, is those are smaller communities that don't necessarily have the greater overarching. For example, every faction has a Facebook page, and there is a new forum that's catching a lot of steam right now. Like, they're going ahead real hard, which is awesome to see. And Grind and Iron Kingdoms don't really have that. And to take a step back from that, even to your statement, like, the decision was not made lightly because, while it's hard to say that people didn't invest into it, people did put a lot of time into it. There was no question about that. And we tried to avoid invalidating that as much as possible, which is part of why those other forums still exist. Like, there's tons and tons of work in the hobby forums. And
So with the concept design of, the new player forums is a place where you go because you're new, you don't know, quote unquote, I'm going to say the lay of the land, that is the faction Facebook pages and the forums and all the other stuff. Is Privateer Press going to do anything about giving people a pinned post that becomes a hub for directional outside of the forums, or is it more of a hopefully the community can spread the word enough on its own to direct new players towards those other resources, unofficial resources?
The good news about that is something that is being collated right now. We're pulling together things that we feel we can properly say we are okay with this, because there's always that fine line of endorsement where it's yeah, we say that's cool, and then that person goes around and says, things that are exceptionally problematic.
Yeah.
Like, part of a consideration was saying, like, we haven't directly pushed for this new forum in any way because we don't know what it's going to shake out to be. We don't want to put stock into something that could be devastating across the whole. So we will be putting together a page like that where it's like, hey, if you're curious about these things, go check out these podcasts. Go over to these websites. Like, there's an amazing community out there. These are the people we think that you will benefit from.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that it was captured in some way, because in a lot of ways, I didn't know, like myself, I didn't even know at one point in time there was a Minions Facebook page until I saw a post on the forums that linked to the Minions Facebook page.
Yeah, I think it becomes kind of sometimes an issue with that is because, I was just sitting here on Facebook while we were talking, and I just typed in Cricks. And on Facebook, it popped up 6 different groups, and so sometimes it can be kind of harder to pick, especially since it is personally mandated or run by individuals. That could be kind of an issue. Now, on the earlier statement about the faction forums being closed down, everything that I've seen on the CID forums has been super constructive, and I mean, there's a reason that there are memes that exist that says, do not go to the faction forums. It is a dark place. So, I can definitely agree with you on that, Jackson, where, there was just a lot of screaming for the sake of screaming that wasn't always constructive. And I noticed, especially Press Ganger, and Tony, you can back me up on this if you would like, one of our major suggestions to new players is do not go to the forum and post your list and stuff, because we felt like, you just kind of get butchered. And I never thought that was constructive.
That's why we reworked it the way we did, is too often than not that would happen. And it was, as a new player, it can be devastating to be like, well, I put a lot of thought into this and I thought it was a lot of fun, and you're telling me that I'm a terrible human being. Those two don't relate.
That's true. It kind of does, not really make sense.
Some of that stuff is really rough. So, I have been really impressed so far with the CID forums in how constructive and well kept it is. And some of the old forum factions, like, I'm an avid poster on the on the painting side of the Privateer Press forums, and I definitely suggest people to go there. Everybody who exists there is very supportive. I never really felt that too much in the faction form. So, it was a shock, but I think it was something that's going to turn out to be beneficial.
Yeah, well, and going further than that, like talking about outside support, there's a phenomenal Warmachine and Hordes painting group that exists on Facebook that has some
really?
Those models.
They have the worst moderator ever.
Do they?
That guy is just terrible.
Well, I can't speak to chat, and I don't want to badmouth anybody, but...
Oh, it's Devin. It's fine.
Oh, okay.
It's me. Yeah, that's my group. Yeah, 6,700 people. So.
I love going in there and watching stuff. Like, I hang out and, comment on things every now and then. I go, oh, I love that artwork. Like, that gives me inspiration for painting things. So it's just...
Great. Now Devin's head's going to be even bigger than it is normally.
Thanks a lot, Jackson.
Thanks, Jackson.
It's the marketing talking to me, though, too.
I just love the fact that it came up naturally, and he had no idea. That just makes me happier, that it came up naturally and that the group got suggested. And for any new listeners out there, the group is very good for people who are interested in painting. So a shameless plug there.
Well, I'm playing it too. I love it. I am not an amazing painter, but I thankfully have Dallas to help guide me sometimes. But that group has definitely given me more insight than I would have gotten otherwise.
It is a very good
Well,
group.
So like that's kind of the point here is like there are resources and we want to help point people towards them, but in the grand scheme, it is a business decision as well, where it's we will invite criticism and we want to see criticism. We just don't want to see people being negative for the sake of being negative because it doesn't help anybody.
So we're kind of running low on time here, but I did want to kind of get one more in, if that's okay.
Whatever time you guys want to give, I have at least another 30 minutes if you want it.
Because I got one or two more questions too, Kevin. So it depends on what you ask. I'm going to ask something as well.
Okay, well, one of the things I wanted to kind of establish was within recent times, there's been a lot of the staff, a lot of the talent's been kind of being pulled out of the company because they're either going on to other personal avenues or different transitions in their career path that they're going through. And with the forums being reduced and the PGs being disbanded, a lot of people are passionately, which I guess, I'll take an aside and say, it's a weird scenario where you're happy people are passionately arguing about it because that means they like the game and they like the community, but at the same time, how they argue about it isn't necessarily the best way. But there's a lot of growing passionate concern over what's happening with the company. Like, some of this stuff is kind of blindsiding people because they just weren't prepared for it or weren't being exposed to anything that might be coming down the pike, like a CID exposing people to a new faction. There's no, this is coming down the pike. Is the company doing stuff to make sure that there's more exposure or more awareness of this game's not dying? Like, nothing's bad. We're doing some cleaning house, but we're still planning on growing. We're still planning on expanding. Obviously, a company needs to make money, but we want the community to grow.
Our plan is always to grow. I can talk personally, so this may take more time than expected to answer. So since I came in 6 months ago, I've been participatory in a lot of these big decisions, which I never expected to be, because a lot of what I believe is all right, cool, I'll make sure that happens, Matt. That's a lot of how I feel about things. But oftentimes, oh no, my opinion matters and it's valued, and talking about it. There has been a lot of stuff happening all within a very short time frame, and I know that scares people. And I do my best to assure people that it's not because things are bad, it's because things need to happen. There are constraints that exist outside of us at times that we need to make sure that things happen on a certain deadline or happen in a certain capacity. And so, for example, the change from putting rules in books. The goal is to make a dynamic game. And not dynamic in that it's going to change every month. We don't want that. We want to make the best game we possibly can. And so those early erratas were because we needed to make those changes. And so we were cognizant of what was happening in the world around us. We tried to make the least impact on the community as possible. So, for example, from my marketing perspective of things, we put out the Una 2 update after an event happened because we didn't want to invalidate the event, and we didn't want to invalidate purchases of Una 2. So we wanted to make sure that people saw the changes of Una 2 first and go, okay, I still like this model, I want it. And so those are conscious decisions to say, we're trying to impact you guys as little as possible because you matter. And that leads into everything else, really, where we are doing the things we're doing in the time frame, and it may seem blindsided because some of it we can't telegraph it to you. We can't just say, hey, here's a deal. We're going to get rid of all these things now, and here's why. Sometimes we just kind of have to do it.
I guess it's one of those situations where a lot of people feel very conflicted about it because on one hand, you've got CID and you're like, we're going to give you early exposure to rules and we want your feedback and we want your insight and all that stuff. And that's great. A lot of the community are really driving towards it. I think the 2,300 people that have signed up for the CID is a prime example of why people want that stuff. But at the same time, it's okay, this same company that's we want to expose you early and often we can't expose you early and often. And I think that's conflicting for a lot of people of, well, wait a second. On one hand, you want my input, but on the other hand, it blindsides. And again, I really, really feel like a lot of this turmoil or struggle or strife is because people cannot separate the emotion from the business.
Well, that's okay. I want people to be passionate. People are going to have feelings. And to earlier, if people are upset about things, I'm not here to tell you how you should feel. If you're upset, be upset. Be upset as long as it takes for you to be okay. Change happens, and it's scary, and it's always going to be scary. But the hope is that the change will be for the better.
So, Jackson, so we've seen you go on to the 60-minute death clock. I think that's what it's called. And you're with us. We've seen Privateer Press be on a couple other podcasts in the past. Is there any rhyme or reason as to why you guys are, kind of getting on podcasts more? Is there specific ones you're looking at? What can you kind of tell us about that?
That one is also multifaceted, as most things I bring to the table. We are looking to increase communications, as has been known, and of course, oftentimes when we don't talk about things, there's good reason why we can't talk about things. But this is something I can't talk about. I realize as I say things, like there'll be a lot of, oh, well, this may make sense if you pull these pieces together, but we want to make sure that we get that exposure out there. As I was saying earlier, I know not everybody reads everything or sees things on the internet, but they may listen to podcasts, they may listen to televised whatever, and it's a chance for them to get the media somehow. And so in that, we've been reaching out to, in the same way we don't want to discourage criticism, podcasts that we feel have positive messages, even if they are critical, because being critical is important to any kind of growth. And we're reaching out to them saying, hey, we like what you have to say. We're not here to moderate you. We're not here to say, don't talk like that. We want to participate, and we're happy to lean into those harder questions. And the worst that's going to come of it is we can't talk about it right now. And so that's part of why I'm here too, is I want to give credence, as do other people, that say the people you are listening to are worth listening to. They have good things to say, even if it doesn't agree with us. And we want to highlight that fact. We want to say, hey, you don't agree with us? Let's talk about it. Let's make a forum for, let's have discussion.
Turn Extension becomes the voice of the people.
God, no.
Yeah, God, please no.
Well, it's not, but it'll be one of several opinions that are going to exist out there. Like what you all have to say is potentially going to be different from this Death Clock has 60 minutes versus Moot Point that Pagani has been on as well versus any other shows that we go on to and try to talk with you all.
So is this, and I know we talked about this earlier when we were talking about, setting up workarounds or mitigating change and stuff like that, is coming on to podcasts or coming on to, YouTube channels for interviews, because you guys have done interviews with us before when we go to conventions where you're at. Is this just a way of increasing that exposure, since you in a way decrease some exposure by removing forums and stuff like that? Is this a mitigating strategy, or is this just something where you're like, we want to be more engaged in the communities that are supportive of our games?
It had started out as just wanting to be more supportive, and realistically, the mitigation is just a side effect of that. It wasn't, I will happily admit, it was not a planned method. It was just we want to do this because we love our community. We don't want to make you mad. We want to provide the best game we can and the best experience we can, and the community is phenomenal. When people say that the Warmachine and Hordes community is the best one out there, and I agree 100%. It's a happy accident that it's a mitigating factor.
It's like putting your caster in the right spot, not realizing you get to assassinate next turn. You didn't plan it, but you'll take it.
Or, making sure that you're left on one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. I will definitely say for our listeners that you all should know that when Jackson reached out to us, Tony literally screamed like a little girl. Like,
I did. I'm pretty sure I peed myself.
Squeal. he literally screamed like a little girl. So let me just definitely say that was a good moment for me.
As I told you all, I wanted to make sure that this was another avenue that people could hear more than just what they read or what could be hearsay. This is coming from me, and this is coming from my position.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of ways that you have the community who's raging about this change because they feel betrayed, unjustified, whatever the case might be. Being able to hear it from the horse's mouth of this is kind of why we were doing it could help the community get past it. Like you said, everybody is going to have to get over this in their own time. But even though I was outraged when it first came out, I've come to the point now where I'm rational enough to go, Privateer Press has not screwed us in the past. Let's give them a chance. Let's see how this plays out and have confidence in the direction to go. Not to the point of mindlessly following. I think we should raise our voice whenever we feel like something is wrong, but at the same time, raging for the point of raging does nobody any good. Let's see how this path takes us, and I'm sure that Privateer Press will change the course if they feel that it's not going the direction that they initially planned.
I feel the same way. I'll fully admit, when I first saw when I was first told about the press gang being disbanded, I was pretty upset. I think throughout the last couple of days, and really the conversation we've had with you today, Jackson, has kind of really calmed a lot of my fears a lot more, because you instantly want to go to, it's cold, it's blah blah. There's not a lot of communication going out, but as you're discussing, like, you can really feel the passion in your words, I feel. And you can tell, like, it's like what you said. The first thing you said was nobody in the office has been happy about getting rid of the PGs. No one in the office is really excited about some of the things that have been done, but at the end of the day, it's a business decision. No matter how much it stinks, it's a job. It's a business at the end of the day. You guys have to protect yourself. And I get that. It's just kind of hearing that, but also hearing the compassion behind it, for me at least, it's settled a lot of my anxiety, I think, that I've had.
Well,
Something that I have to say, being a PG, and I want to throw this out to any PG listeners, one of the greatest things that I definitely saw using Facebook as an outlet recently is that even though our community got disbanded, the amount of, like, thankful posts, like these long posts thanking so many people, were actually super inspiring. And I think Michael or Chili said it best. He said that he had been feeling really down and sour recently, and, just seeing all these different posts where, individual people, whether they were long-term PGs, new PGs, just thanking all the community and the people that basically mentored them and were there for them, and all these, like, great times we've had, actually kind of restored his faith in actually the game. Even though he was feeling a little bit down about the game, it kind of, still, even in the light of everything that happened, the community really came together. And I think that's something that Privateer Press has given us. And even though, this change had to happen, that community still exists. And that was something that I think was very evident, in people's posts and thanks.
One question before, we kind of wrap this thing up is, can you give us any insight to any changes in the future, good, bad, anything at all, really? You can tell us about the future of Privateer Press?
yeah, I can talk about that a little bit. Not too much. I jokingly say a bunch of the time that I'm a keeper of secrets, but it is true. Even though CID exists, I still have to hold on to some vestiges of secrecy. With CID, first of all, Grimkin is its own thing right now, but we're going to also be seeing when people submit battle reports and things like that and go, oh, that model may be, let's put a note there. Let's come back to this. And so as we go forward, as we've mentioned before, for example, when we do trenchers, we're going to bring in old models to test as well, because we want to make sure that they're functioning properly and they don't create something that is its own nightmare scenario. That's going to be part of it. And two, like that's one thing on the horizon. CID is going to be an interesting journey for everyone, because it is a whole new game for us in terms of how we're going to proceed forward. We've done an open test before my time here, but we've never done something on this scale. So that's one thing. Two, as I said, we're going to try to do more support. With that could come more events, more interesting events for people to participate in, so we're not neglecting the casual players out there or those people who just want to have fun while also practicing for tournaments.
Okay.
Let's see what else is very interesting. Today, if everything goes according to plan, some rumors will be confirmed.
Really?
But I will give it to you today. I jokingly led on a friend who was exceptionally excited for something that is going to be solicited soon. Mindfully, that information came through leaks and otherwise in the past. That was before me, and he's like, I'm so excited for this thing. I'm like, well, that thing's it's not going to happen. It's not a real thing. You're not going to get it. I'm sorry. But I think he is now. I think I am incorrect. I believe that one of the new Warcasters that's coming out for Ret is Goreshade 4 and not Gear Shield 1.
Oh my god!
So that is a thing that is coming, but
That is awesome.
Now, because by the time this runs, it will have already been solicited.
Correct. Yeah. I know. We'll make sure. That is awesome. Okay.
Tony,
Late, sir.
Tony,
Well
get
played.
this out in the next 15 minutes. Tony, get on editing. Get this out in the next 15 minutes.
But I've not leaned in too hard to Broken Egg Games getting to put that art out there. It was not necessarily an unintentional spoiler, but something we leaned into where we said, hey, you guys are doing this really cool product. How about you guys take the reins on this one and see what happens?
Oh, that is awesome. That is pretty cool.
So there's some cool stuff there. I was going to say the Red Book is the biggest of the command books. It has the most stuff coming in it as well. And yeah, just publication-wise, things are going to be very interesting. But I will say this is the final assurance I can give. We do not have any big, sweeping, what makes people scared changes on the horizon.
Okay.
We've been to the new year and have said, we have done the necessary damage. Because we know it's going to scare people and that will cause damage. We did the things we knew we had to do now so that the further roadmap is as clean as possible.
So we can expect a calm in this storm?
Yes, we're very close to it right now. As the months go on, there shouldn't be anything big that's going to shake people up or scare them.
That's awesome. You guys got anything else?
I will definitely say that I'm excited about the new measuring sticks by Broken Egg Games. Actually, the Advanced Maneuvers Honest Reviews, we actually have those on their way, and we will be doing a review of those personally, too. And I think one of the ones is the actual RET set, so that's kind of a cool little piece of information.
Yeah, I don't know if I necessarily have anything else. I just, it's one of those situations where we really felt like we needed to have a discussion around this. I want to say thank you, Jackson, for actually coming and talking to us about this. I won't necessarily say it's an anathema, but we as the community are not necessarily used to Privateer Press coming on to podcasts, so I'm kind of inspired to see how further other podcasts might be able to experience having Privateer Press come to them. I'm looking forward to seeing a more involved Privateer Press in the social media end of Warmachine and Hordes, and thanks for joining us and coming on.
Of course, please don't give me too much praise. I'm just happy to be here. I'm just another guy like anybody else, and this is just the stuff I love to do.
All right. Well, I guess that's it, man, for the episode. I want to thank you very much again, Jackson. Thank you guys, and thank you guys for listening to another episode of Turn Extension.